Hi everyone, and welcome back to another Tech Bytes review. Today we're going to be reviewing the Kensington Expert. This is one of the very few fingertip or palm operated trackballs that exist out there on the market today, so there should be plenty to talk about. We'll run through everything from durability to usability and then finally wrap this up with a quick summary. So stay tuned and we should be in for a pretty good review. Before we jump into build quality, I did want to remind you, if you want to support this channel, please make sure to subscribe, hit the like button, let me know what you like in the comments below, and also don't forget that this review, along with many others, are included on the blog site Byte Authority that's listed in the description. If you do want to support this channel and plan on buying one of these trackballs, also consider using one of the affiliate links that I've linked into both the description and on the blog site as well. Jumping back into the review, we will kick things off with build quality as usual. Kensington is not new to this space. They've been making both keyboards, mice, other various peripherals for decades now, and their quality has always been right up there on par with Logitech and some of the other big name manufacturers that you'd see out there. So definitely a lot to expect here in terms of the quality side of things. The plastic that they use is top notch, right in line with what you would see coming out of Logitech, like on their MX Ergo line or anything like that. Very, very sturdy, very durable, not a single bit of case creak like what we saw in some of the Elecom devices or some of those cheaper trackballs. It's overall just a very, very solid, very sturdy device, no case creak, nothing like that. The plastic itself is a little bit chalky, but not in a bad way. It doesn't feel chalky, it just feels kind of like a matte black finish, which is actually pretty nice because you don't get too much light reflection. You can see this tiny little piece of plastic that goes around. It does reflect the light, but it's not terrible. So overall, the case, both the back and the top of the unit, get a giant thumbs up. I mean, you really can't get much more durable than this. It's also a very simple design. There's no form-fitted ergonomic type of shape going on here, so it's kind of hard to mess this up. But at the same time, they did produce a very nice, solid wedge, plastic wedge. So it's They did a great job. You're not going to have issues with the case wobbling or anything like that. Moving into the buttons, they actually use the same plastic, at least from feel, as what the case is made out of as well. So it does give kind of that nice fluid feel to it. You know, everything's kind of made out of the same quality materials and whatnot. They didn't really cheap out on any parts. So again, buttons themselves feel great. Because of the fact that they do use this heavier plastic that the case is made out of, there's a lot more weight, and it does require quite a bit more force to actuate these buttons than it does on, say, like a MX M575 or something along those lines. So it is much more of a stiffer button click, which personally I love that. I do believe the switches that they're sitting on are going to be some form of cheap Chinese Omron switch. There's just no getting around that with any manufacturer these days. But again, that's just a guess. I could be mistaken. That's just what it feels like. So they are snappy. Given the switches themselves, you're probably looking at a solid 1.5 to 2 years of durability out of it. But the case and the plastic are going to last you much longer than that. So if you're not opposed to opening it up, soldering some switches in, you're looking at a pretty solid device in terms of build quality and switches. Now, moving into the ball, this is obviously one of the biggest selling points. The fact that the ball sits right in the center and it's ambidextrous. Obviously, the buttons are programmable, so you can make this work for both left, right-handed, any kind of mapping that you want to do. The ball itself lifts out of this hole just as easy as that. So whereas some of your thumb-operated trackballs have a little hole on the bottom that you need to pop the ball out of, this is as easy as just popping it out. It also means that if you flip it over, the ball will fall out and roll across the floor, which could be a problem. So just be careful when you're taking it and turning it around, but at the same time, it's a giant 55mm ball. No issues whatsoever with really it rolling around and having any stiction issues on the bearings. So again, looking at the bearings themselves, it does look like those Ruby synthetic bearings that we saw from Elecom, which are complete crap. But the good news is they don't perform like crap like Elecom's did. So it does roll very, very smoothly. No real issues with it sticking. I mean, right out of the box, it worked fine. Haven't had any issues with it since. Put it through the ringer, so you know I used it for about 2 months or so and didn't really have any issues with it. So overall, I would give the buttons, the case, and the ball with the bearings combination a very big thumbs up. I mean, again, it's a very simple design, but Kensington did a great job with it. The only piece that I would change on the top portion of the unit is this scroll wheel. I'm not sure if you can hear it on the video, but there's this kind of annoying scratch when you move it. It's almost like the scroll wheel is rubbing up against a piece of plastic that it's sitting on top of. It also doesn't have notches. So what happens is, as you're moving the ball around, if your pinky accidentally smacks into that wheel, you're going to find yourself scrolling, which is very problematic if you're trying to use this for gaming or any kind of design work. You don't want to be scrolling all over the place accidentally. So I do think that the scroll ring itself could benefit from some form of notch or increased force to move it. It's so close to being perfect. I love the fact that it's here, but the biggest knock on the build quality, hands down, has to be the scroll ring itself. It's not flimsy. I mean, it stays in place, so it's not like a cheap piece of plastic that's sitting on here. It's just kind of, it does have that scratchiness, and it's way too easy to spin where you'll accidentally knock it as you're using the trackball. That's the only thing I can really knock on the top portion. The bottom is pretty simple. You do have a space here with the battery to store the USB dongle. This is both wireless dongle, 2.4 gigahertz dongle, and Bluetooth, which is fantastic. It's powered by 2 AA batteries, and you really can't get much better than that. So it's nice and simple, nothing really crazy to report on the device. One thing that this does have that almost no other trackball that I've seen comes with it is a free additional wrist rest. It snaps on using these two little prongs in the back, and it just clips right on here in the back, and it stays nice and planted. For being a free wrist rest, this is way better than some of the crap you get that you pay extra for from like Razer, I mean, or something like that. So I mean, the fact that they're handing these out for free with their trackball instead of trying to make an extra buck off of it, like the wedge for the MX Ergo or something, it's huge. I'm pleasantly surprised that Kensington is going to throw something in like this. So good job, Kensington. Build quality gets a giant thumbs up. Probably go back to the drawing board on the scroll ring just to see what's going on with the scratchiness and make it a little tighter. But all in all, it's a pretty solid device from a build quality standpoint. Moving into the usability side of things, there's really two main issues that I had with this device. One of which being the scroll ring, which I already alluded to. I'll go into a little bit more detail with that. But the second and more important issue was the tracking and cursor drift that I experienced. Now what that is, if you're not familiar with it, sometimes you get this with the cheaper sensors. And while the sensor in here isn't cheap, it's also not like a gaming grade that you may be used to. And what I found is if you do tight consecutive circles like this with the trackball, you'll find that your cursor, while it may be centered in the screen, will slowly, as it spins around, drift and drift and drift and drift until it hits the side of your screen, and you're not really moving the ball at all. You're just keeping it stationary, but yet that cursor continues to drift. I did look it up to see if maybe I just had a defective unit, but there are quite a few people out there on Reddit and various forums that have described very similar issues. The cursor drift was more prominent doing like some KiCad work and kind of spinning this thing around trying to zoom across two monitors. It did stutter a couple times when flicked fast like this. And again, we're talking moving across the side of one 27-inch screen to the other. So there was quite a bit of space. I was flicking it pretty hard. And the tracking was just lacking a little bit. It became mostly problematic during my gaming sessions when I was trying this out. You could see the Byte Authority site if you want to see my feedback on that. But overall, I think it could use a better sensor internally. I don't know if that's what's causing it. I didn't dig into it too far, but it caused enough of a headache using editing and things like that that I did actually switch this out and go back to my X-Keys L track. That was the biggest issue, the cursor drift. I would say 95% of the time I didn't have issues with it, but it was that 5% that became annoying enough that I ended up just switching it out. As far as the scroll ring is concerned, the biggest issue I had, I mean, yeah, the scratchiness aside, that's more of a build quality issue, but bumping it while using it, I kind of have my hand somewhat tilted on it like this when I'm using it, so I can just hit this with my thumb, but I do rest it on the right side. And so what that means is as I'm moving this around, you can see my pinky, if I'm not careful, accidentally bumps. So like if I'm moving up and down on a web page, my pinky will accidentally rub against that wheel. And that's just enough pressure on this scroll ring to cause it to go up and down. And it's really annoying, especially when you're browsing the web and you're trying to zoom over and you accidentally flick it. I didn't think it would be an issue, but it actually was quite a big issue just for day-to-day browsing. And it may be something you get used to. I didn't, so it's unfortunate that it doesn't require more force, but it is what it is. As far as ergonomics go, you're not looking at too much in the way of them here. In fact, I would say it probably hurts more than some of the other trackballs I have, just because your hand is kind of cranked up at this angle like that. The wrist rest that they've included with it does help a lot. And so it does kind of give a little bit of extra support while you're using it day to day. But for the most part, I wouldn't necessarily buy this if you're looking for something that's going to fix your wrist pain. If anything, it might add to it unless you have a setup that works a little bit better than what I had. But using it was fine. Again, aside from the cursor drift issues and the tracking issues, and aside from the scroll ring issues, it works great. The software that they have allows you to program all of these 4 different buttons in a bunch of different ways. You can do things like program this button to have different actions depending on the application that you're on, and various things like that. So using it is fine. I would say for your average user, you're probably not going to encounter heavy issues with that drifting and whatnot. But if you do have a setup where you have big monitors and you're zooming across, you may want to try it before you lock yourself into this for a while, because you may encounter some of those issues as well. Finally, to wrap this up with a summary, I would give the Kensington Expert a 6 or 7 out of 10. And I know that sounds probably pretty low compared to how much I talked about it being a solid device, but when you're looking at the price tag associated with this, which is around the $80 range, sometimes more depending on when you buy it, could be closer to $90. You just don't get that much in terms of features. And if you're going to have things like a faulty scroll wheel, or if you have the more egregious like cursor drift or cursor tracking issues, it really takes away from the overall device. And for $90, you can get some really fantastic trackballs like the MX Ergo. You're working your way closer to an X Keys L Track or something along those lines. There's just so many different options out there for that $80 to $90 that, you know, I don't know that I could justify spending it on this device. If you are just looking for something that's comfortable to use and won't break the bank and is reliable, I mean, for $15 you could grab a Logitech Marble Trackman. So it's, again, I think this gets a lower rating just because I don't think you're getting as much bang for your buck out of it. And that concludes today's review, everybody. Thank you for watching. Please let me know what you liked or didn't like down in the comments below. I do read those every time a new comment comes in, and I have seen the feedback. I've seen people requesting whether it be repair videos or new trackballs to review and things like that. So really enjoy interacting with all of you, and thank you again for watching. Stay tuned for the next review.